They thought the new black girl would break. Instead, she broke the leader's jaw. In a classroom where bullies ruled like bored tyrants, Ariel Carter was supposed to be the easy target, the quiet transfer student who'd swallow humiliation and keep her head down. But when Blake Rowan grabbed her in front of everyone, mocking her like it was his birthright, he learned the hard way that not all prey runs. One counterstrike, one scream, one unconscious bully on the floor. The morning bell hadn't even settled when Ariel Carter stepped into Class 10B for the first time. The room was colder than it should have been. Fluorescent lights hummed faintly overhead, washing the desks in a sterile glow that made everything feel tense, compressed, almost airless. Students who had been talking moments earlier fell silent one by one, their conversations dying mid-sentence, as if someone had pressed mute on the entire room. Ariel paused just inside the doorway. She didn't say anything, didn't smile, didn't shrink. She simply scanned the classroom with eyes that were steady, unreadable. Her braids fell neatly behind her shoulders, and she held her backpack strap with a grip that suggested habit more than nerves. But the room didn't see any of that nuance. They saw only one thing, the new black girl, and in a school like Westbrook, that alone was enough to make her a target. Jessie Hale, the quiet girl at the second-row window seat, watched with concern flickering in her eyes. She'd seen this pattern too many times. New kid, different kid, instantly thrown into the unofficial hierarchy Blake Rowan ruled over like a self-crowned king. And right on cue, Blake noticed her. He leaned back in his chair, varsity jacket bright orange like a warning sign, a smirk stretching across his face. Evan, his loyal shadow, nudged him with a snicker. The two of them exchanged a look that said everything. Fresh prey. Ariel moved deeper into the classroom, the scrape of her shoes against the tiled floor louder than it should have been in the unnatural quiet. She scanned the seating for an empty desk, and her gaze landed on a spot 2 rows from the front. Next to Blake, he saw her looking, and he made his move. With exaggerated laziness, Blake stretched his legs across the seat next to him, blocking it completely. The message was obvious, shameless, and cruel in the way only bored teenagers with inflated egos excel at. He narrowed his eyes at Ariel, lips curling. Taken. Evan snickered loudly enough to make sure the whole row heard. Jessie lowered her head, inwardly begging Ariel to choose another seat, to avoid the fight she could see lining up like storm clouds. In this school, resistance came with consequences, but Ariel didn't fold. She didn't flinch. She didn't even blink. She walked straight to the desk as if Blake's legs weren't blocking it, as if the entire room hadn't frozen to witness the outcome. When she reached the chair, she set her backpack down with calm precision. Then, without a word, she tapped Blake's shin aside. Not roughly, not violently, but with a firm, controlled pressure that made it clear. Move. Blake's smirk vanished. A ripple of disbelief spread through the onlookers. No one ever pushed back on him, not physically, not verbally, not at all. And yet this girl, this quiet new girl, acted like he was just another obstacle in her path. Ariel pulled out the chair and sat down next to him. Posture relaxed, expression cool, eyes fixed forward as though Blake didn't exist. Blake stared at her. Evan stared at Blake. Jessie stared at all of them with her breath held. Ariel didn't even spare him a glance. That, more than anything, was what made Blake's jaw flex with irritation. A bully's biggest fear isn't a punch, it's irrelevance. And Ariel had just treated him like he wasn't worth noticing. A bully hates nothing more than a target who refuses to be scared. But what truly ignited Blake's anger, what made this little seating incident feel like an unforgivable insult, wouldn't reveal itself until the next class, when he decided to push harder and discovered Ariel wasn't as soft as she looked. The moment Mr. Watkins stepped out of the classroom, the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't dramatic. Just a subtle loosening of the tension, the kind that happens when authority leaves and predators think the jungle belongs to them again. A few conversations restarted. Chairs scraped. Someone laughed too loudly at a joke that wasn't funny. Blake Rowan leaned back in his seat, cracking his knuckles as if warming up for a show. Evan nudged him again, eyes flicking toward Ariel like a silent dare. Ariel sat quietly at her desk, flipping open her notebook, her posture calm and composed. Jessie watched her from 2 rows away, whispering a small prayer under her breath. She knew exactly what Blake was like when he was bored, and worse, when he felt disrespected. And Blake felt very, very disrespected. He waited until just the right moment, when Ariel bent down to reach for a pencil inside her bag. Then he extended his foot under the desk and kicked the leg of her table sharply, sending the whole surface jarring sideways. Ariel's notebook slid to the floor, her pens scattered. Her water bottle toppled and rolled away. Laughter rippled across the room. Quick, sharp, eager. The kind of laughter that rises out of collective cowardice. Jessie winced. Evan grinned. Blake didn't bother hiding his satisfaction. "Oops," he said, voice dripping with false innocence. "Clumsy table. You should pick better ones." Ariel didn't respond, didn't glare, didn't flinch. She simply knelt down to gather her things, her movements slow, steady, almost meditative. Her silence irritated Blake more than any comeback ever could. He wanted fear. He wanted trembling. He wanted her to acknowledge his power. Instead, she treated him like noise, unimportant, ignorable. When Ariel reached for her notebook, Blake saw an opportunity to reclaim the attention he felt he deserved. He rose halfway from his chair and lifted his foot, aiming to slam it down on her notebook right before she could grab it. Several students gasped. Evan's eyebrows shot up with excitement. Jessie gripped her desk, whispering, "No, no, no, don't do it." But Blake never made contact, because before his shoe could touch the cover of her notebook, Ariel's hand shot up, 2 fingers extended, catching the edge of his sneaker. 2 fingers, not a full grip, not a defensive block, just 2, and she held him in place. The entire classroom froze. Blake blinked, stunned that his foot wasn't moving, stunned that he physically couldn't push past her. A flicker of confusion rushed through his expression, quickly chased by the shock of realizing he had underestimated the wrong person. Ariel lifted her gaze, calm as still water. "I said don't," she murmured. Not loud, not threatening, but with the kind of quiet certainty that made the hair on Evan's arms stand up. Blake swallowed. He didn't mean to, but the sound was loud enough for Evan to hear. He pulled his foot back fast, pretending it was just a joke, pretending he hadn't just felt something he never expected. Fear. Ariel retrieved her notebook and stood up slowly. She didn't brag, didn't intimidate, didn't show off. She simply walked back to her seat and resumed writing as if Blake Rowan hadn't just been stopped by a girl using half a hand. The class exchanged uneasy glances. No one laughed now. Jessie stared at Ariel with wide eyes, torn between admiration and disbelief. Evan elbowed Blake, whispering, "Dude, what was that?" But Blake didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his eyes locked on Ariel like she had just rewritten the rules of his world. And she had. Real strength doesn't need to brag. Sometimes it takes only a small movement to expose who's truly powerless. But Blake couldn't let it end there. Ariel's calm defiance didn't cool him down. It ignited something uglier. And in the next class, he'd decide to push far harder, unaware he was stepping closer to humiliation he couldn't take back. The classroom during break always carried a restless kind of noise. Papers rustling, chairs dragging, conversations bubbling over each other. But today, the air felt different, thicker, tight enough to press against the ribs. Ariel sensed it before she even closed her notebook. Blake was quiet. Evan was too quiet, and silence from the 2 of them was never a good sign. Jessie sat 2 seats away, pretending to review her notes but really watching Ariel with nervous eyes. She had seen Blake's face after Ariel blocked his stomp. Not angry, humiliated. And humiliation was fuel for people like him. Blake leaned forward on his desk, elbows wide, studying Ariel the way someone studies an animal they don't understand. Evan smirked beside him, feeding the fire. "So," Blake began, voice loud enough for half the class to hear, "where exactly did they dig you up from?" A few heads lifted. Ariel didn't. She continued writing. Blake clicked his tongue. "Don't ignore me. I'm curious. What's the story? Some little inner-city charity case they dropped into our school to look diverse?" A ripple ran through the room. Some students stiffened. Others averted their eyes. Jessie's heartbeat spiked. She wanted to say something. Anything. But fear caught her by the throat. She'd seen what happened to kids who got in Blake's way. She saw the bruises, the rumors, the warnings whispered between bathroom stalls. Blake wasn't done. He leaned even closer to Ariel's desk. "Come on. Look at me when I'm talking to you. Or do they teach manners where you're from? Assuming your neighborhood even has schools." A few boys snickered. A girl muttered, "That's messed up," but no one stepped in. Ariel's pencil paused mid-sentence. She didn't breathe in sharply. She didn't clench her jaw. She simply set her pencil down. It was the smallest movement, yet somehow it shifted the entire room. Blake misread it as submission. Evan smirked wider. "That's what I thought," Blake said. "You people never—" Ariel stood up. No one expected it. The sudden motion made the laughter choke mid-breath. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, a sound far more intimidating than any shout could have been. She turned to face Blake fully, her posture straight, her expression calm, her eyes steady, too steady. Blake faltered for a second, just one, but it was enough for the room to notice. Ariel stepped closer, closing the space between them until Blake had to tilt his chin up slightly to maintain eye contact. Evan's smile faded. Jessie covered her mouth, frozen. Ariel's voice, when it came, was low but sharp enough to slice through the tension. "Don't touch a line you wouldn't survive crossing." Blake's face drained of color. It wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive, but it carried weight, real weight, the kind that comes not from bravado, but from experience, from someone who knew exactly what she was capable of. Evan whispered, "Bro," but Blake didn't respond. A few students exchanged stunned looks. Others stared openly, amazed that anyone, dared talk to Blake Rowan like that. For the first time since Ariel had arrived, the power dynamic in the room flickered, just a flicker, but enough to rattle Blake's ego like a punch to the ribs. Jessie looked between them, breath held. She felt something shifting, dangerously. Ariel stepped back to her seat with the same calmness she had stood up with. She didn't wait for Blake's reaction, didn't check to see if he was angry or stunned. She simply picked up her pencil and resumed writing, as if the confrontation had been a brief interruption. Nothing more. The room stayed silent for several long seconds. Then Blake forced out a laugh, too loud, too forced, too thin. "Oh, okay, you think you're funny," he said, voice cracking around the edges. "We'll see how tough you are in math class." The threat hung heavy in the air. No one had ever talked to Blake like that, and he wasn't going to let it go. Humiliated and challenged, Blake made up his mind. The next class, math, would be where he put Ariel back in her place, no matter the cost. Math class at Westbrook High always carried a specific kind of dread, not because of the equations, but because Mr. Watkins was notorious for grading in silence, disappearing behind his desk for long stretches while the classroom monitored itself. And a classroom without authority was exactly the playground Blake Rowan needed. Ariel sat near the middle, pen moving steadily across her worksheet. Jessie sat diagonally behind her, chewing her lip anxiously. Blake and Evan occupied the row, right behind Ariel, whispering with their heads bent together. The tension was thick enough to feel between shoulder blades. Mr. Watkins didn't notice a thing. He was hunched over a stack of tests in the back corner, red pen scribbling non-stop, completely oblivious. And Blake took that as permission. He let several minutes pass, long enough for Ariel to look comfortable, focused, unaware. Then he reached forward, hooked 2 fingers around the collar of her shirt, and yanked her backward with a jerk sharp enough to drag the edge of her desk. Ariel's breath caught. Jessie gasped. Several students turned instantly. Blake leaned in, letting his voice carry just enough. "Thought you were tough? Can't even sit still without shaking?" He tugged her collar again, forcing her back. "Sit down, Charity Project. You're in my seat." "My classroom," laughter bubbled from the back row. Quick, cruel, eager. Ariel kept her eyes forward, jaw tight, trying to pull her shirt free without creating more of a spectacle. But Blake tugged again, harder this time, jerking her enough that her notebook slid off her desk and slapped onto the floor. "Blake!" Jessie whispered urgently. "Stop it!" But her voice was swallowed by the rising amusement of the class. These weren't allies. They were spectators waiting to be entertained. Blake leaned closer, his breath brushing her ear. "Go on. Say something. Do that little tough act again." Ariel's hands trembled, not with fear, but restraint. She slowly reached up to remove his grip from her collar. Blake chuckled. "What? Too scared to—" He didn't finish, because the moment his fingers tightened again, Ariel moved. Her hand shot up and clamped around his wrist, fast as a reflex, firm as a lock. Blake's smirk evaporated. Ariel wasn't squeezing, she wasn't twisting, she wasn't attacking at all. She was simply holding him in place, but her grip was iron. Blake tried to pull back. Her hand didn't budge. A second attempt. Harder. Nothing. By the third attempt, Blake's face had changed. His confidence fractured, replaced by something raw. Shock. Then pain. A strangled breath escaped him. "Let go." Ariel didn't move. She finally turned her head, meeting his eyes with a calmness that cut deeper than anger ever could. "Don't touch me again," she said quietly. The room went silent. Not the stunned silence of surprise, the sharp silence of a hierarchy collapsing. Evan stared wide-eyed. Jessie sat frozen halfway through a breath. Even the students who normally worshipped Blake couldn't look away. Mr. Watkins remained oblivious in the back, still marking papers. Ariel released Blake's wrist, letting his hand drop like dead weight. He snatched it back quickly, rubbing the skin where her fingers had been. The red marks forming on his wrist told a story he desperately didn't want anyone to notice. But everyone saw. Everyone. And that was the real humiliation. Blake swallowed hard, cheeks flushing, pride crumbling in front of 30 witnesses. His voice came out thin, strained. "You think that means anything?" It did, and he knew it, but he couldn't back down. Not here, not now, not with the whole class watching. Evan leaned in, whispering urgently, but Blake shoved him off. His eyes burned into Ariel, not with confidence, but with the ugly desperation of someone whose power had just cracked. He hissed under his breath, "After class. You're done." Ariel returned her gaze to her worksheet, unshaken. Jessie stared at her like she was seeing a different person entirely, someone dangerous, someone controlled, someone far stronger than she let on. A bully's worst fear isn't losing a fight, it's being exposed as weak. And Blake, stripped of his untouchable image, made a decision. He would confront Ariel after class, and this time he wouldn't rely on insults or intimidation. He planned to strike. The final minutes of math class dragged like wet cement. Mr. Watkins collected his papers, completely unaware of the storm building behind him. Ariel could feel Blake's stare drilling into the back of her neck the entire time. Hot, silent, venomous. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. The energy radiating off him was enough to warn her that whatever came next wouldn't stay verbal. The bell rang, a sound that normally meant freedom. Today it felt like a countdown. Students stood, gathering their things, chatting, oblivious to the tension coiling tighter with each second. Jessie hovered near Ariel, torn between walking beside her or staying safely out of Blake's radar. Ariel gave her a small nod, one that said, "It's fine." Jessie wasn't convinced. Mr. Watkins stepped out first, heading to the teacher's lounge, and that was all Blake needed. Before Ariel could even lift her backpack, Blake moved, fast and furious, fueled by bruised pride and the desperate need to reclaim his throne. He shoved his desk aside and stepped into her path, blocking her exit. Going somewhere? He growled. Ariel didn't answer. She adjusted her strap and tried to walk past him. Blake's hand slammed against the wall beside her, trapping her in place. Evan snorted behind him. Yeah, that's right. Be quiet now. Ariel breathed slowly. Steady, calm. She didn't raise her voice or her hands. Her silence only angered Blake more. You think you embarrassed me earlier? He spat. You think you're special because you got lucky with some grip trick? He stepped forward, chest puffed, jaw clenched. You're in my school, my class, and I don't let... He didn't finish, because Blake didn't want words anymore. He wanted dominance. With a sudden, explosive motion, he shoved her, hard, both palms slamming into her shoulders with enough force to make several students gasp. Ariel stumbled back 2 steps. Her heel caught the edge of a chair. Her body tilted dangerously, and that's when everything inside her clicked. The world slowed. Noise faded. Instinct took over. Her spine straightened before she fully regained balance. Her feet planted on the floor with precision that didn't belong to someone untrained. Breath steady, shoulders square, eyes fixed, not scared, not shaken, but sharpened like steel. Blake didn't notice the shift. He was too busy laughing. Yeah, that's what I thought, he barked. Evan echoed him. Show her, Blake. The rest of the class backed up, forming an instinctive circle, the sick kind of anticipation building in their chests. This wasn't fear anymore. It was spectacle, a show. Blake lunged again, reaching for Ariel's arm, but this time Ariel moved, not out of panic, not out of anger, out of pure, trained reflex. Her left foot pivoted, her right hand aligned, her weight shifted just enough. And then her fist shot forward. No wasted movement, no hesitation, a single clean, devastating punch. It connected squarely with Blake's jaw. The sound was sharp. An ugly crack, swallowed by collective silence. Blake's body jolted. His eyes went blank. His legs folded beneath him like broken hinges. He collapsed forward onto a desk, knocking it sideways before crumpling to the floor, completely unconscious. For a moment, the room was frozen. No one breathed. No one moved. No one dared speak. Then pandemonium. Gasps. Screams. A chair clattered. Someone shouted Blake's name. Evan stumbled backward, pale, stammering, Dude, what the hell? Jessie's hands flew to her mouth. A student near the back whispered, She knocked him out. In one hit. Ariel stood perfectly still, chest rising and falling calmly, as though she hadn't just flattened the most feared boy in school. Her hand lowered slowly. Her posture remained controlled, almost frighteningly so. The classroom erupted, stunned beyond belief. No one had ever imagined the quiet new girl could drop Blake Rowan with a single strike. Whispers shot across the room like sparks. What is she? Did you see that? Blake didn't even touch her. She's dangerous. No, she's trained. Evan backed away, shaking his head in disbelief. The balance of power had flipped so violently it left the whole room spinning. Ariel looked down at Blake for only a second, expression unreadable, then turned away, grabbing her bag. But even she knew one thing. This punch wasn't the end. It was the beginning of trouble far larger, louder, and more dangerous than she'd ever intended to unleash. The hallway outside room 10B buzzed like a hornet's nest kicked open. Students swarmed in clumps, whispering urgently, phones out, eyes wide, feeding off shock and adrenaline. The moment Ariel stepped into the corridor, the noise dipped, just enough for her to feel it. The shift, the attention, the fear. Jessie hurried at her side, clutching her binder tightly. Ariel, people are talking, like everyone. They saw Blake being carried to the nurse. He was out cold. Ariel didn't break stride. Her breathing was steady, her face unreadable. But Jessie could tell she was tense beneath the calm surface. A group of students parted as they passed, some out of respect, others out of caution, as if Ariel carried some invisible force field. A few stared openly, eyes flicking between Ariel's small frame and the impossible memory of Blake collapsing. Whispers trailed behind them. She knocked him out in one hit? No way. Blake's huge. She didn't even look scared. She must have snapped. Or she knows something. Jessie swallowed hard. The stories were growing their own limbs, their own exaggerations. But the moment Sienna Park appeared at the far end of the hallway, everything escalated. Sienna walked with purpose, gripping her phone like a loaded weapon. She was known for documenting everything, quietly, invisibly, sometimes unfairly. But this time, she had captured something that would ignite the entire school. She approached Ariel and Jessie, eyes sharp. "I got it on video," she said bluntly. Jessie's stomach dropped. "You filmed it?" Sienna nodded. "The whole thing. Blake shoving her first. Ariel just reacting. It's clear." She locked eyes with Ariel. "You weren't the aggressor." Ariel exhaled slowly, the slightest relief brushing her features. "Thank you." But before any of them could say more, Evan's voice exploded from behind a cluster of students. "There she is!" He stormed toward them, face red, hands shaking, the fear and humiliation of watching his best friend crumble replaying in his mind. He jabbed a finger at Ariel. "You think you're walking away from this?" he snarled. "You think you can embarrass Blake, embarrass all of us, and nothing's gonna happen?" Jessie stepped back instinctively. Ariel didn't. Evan's voice rose loud enough for the hallway to fall silent. "You're done, you freak. People like you don't get to win here." A few kids murmured nervously. A few raised their phones. A few stepped back. Sienna crossed her arms. "Back off, Evan." He ignored her. "She's gonna pay for what she did." And that's when Jessie cracked. Her voice trembled, but she said it anyway. Too fast, too loud, too dangerous. "She didn't do anything wrong, and she's trained. Her dad's a military officer. He taught her how to defend herself." Silence slammed into the hallway. Jessie froze as soon as the words left her mouth, realizing what she'd done. Ariel slowly turned her head, eyes narrowing. Not in anger, but in a kind of resigned understanding. Evan blinked, confusion and dread flickering in his expression. "Military? What do you mean, military?" Jessie's voice went small, guilty. "Her dad, he served, for years. He trained her since she was a kid. She didn't attack Blake. She reacted." The rumor detonated instantly, racing down the hallway like wildfire. "She's trained? Her dad's army? So she really could take down Blake. No wonder. That explains everything." But Evan wasn't deterred. If anything, the revelation scraped his pride raw. "Oh, so that's it?" he spat. "She thinks she's special because Daddy's a soldier. Please, she's still gonna pay." Ariel stepped forward. Not aggressively, not confrontationally, just with enough presence to make the hallway tilt. "Evan," she said quietly, "stop." Something in her tone, calm, steady, dangerous, made him hesitate. Just for a split second. But the fear in his eyes told the truth. He wasn't sure he wanted this fight. They had no idea Ariel wasn't someone who toppled easily. She was someone trained to stand back up every time. Jessie tugged Ariel's sleeve urgently. "Ariel! Look!" Ahead of them, a staff member approached at a brisk pace. "Ariel Carter," he called out. "Principal Morgan wants to see you. Now." The hallway buzzed anew, half pity, half curiosity. Ariel nodded once, head high, and followed him toward the main office, knowing the real battle was only beginning. Principal Morgan's office looked more like a courtroom than a place of education. The blinds were half drawn, slicing the room into harsh bars of shadow and light. A polished plaque gleamed behind his desk, next to neatly stacked files, props of authority arranged for intimidation. Ariel stepped inside without flinching. Principal Morgan didn't ask her to sit. He didn't smile. He didn't even greet her. He simply closed the door behind her and folded his hands on the desk with a sigh drenched in disappointment. "Ariel Carter," he began, "we have a very serious situation on our hands." Ariel's gaze was steady. "I understand." "No, I don't think you do." Morgan leaned forward, the lines in his forehead deepening with practiced gravity. Violence in this school is unacceptable under any circumstances. Knocking a student unconscious, I defended myself, Ariel said. Calm but firm, Morgan's expression hardened. We'll get to that, but right now, Blake Rowan is in the nurse's office with a concussion. His parents are furious. They're demanding immediate disciplinary action. Ariel didn't react. She'd expected this. Morgan continued. Blake comes from one of our most supportive families. They've contributed greatly to this school, the community, our programs. Translation: they donate money, so they matter. And because of your actions, Morgan said, voice heavy with accusation, the school is at risk of a serious complaint. Ariel tilted her head. Because I didn't let him hurt me? Morgan's eyes flashed. Annoyed, she wasn't intimidated. Don't twist the narrative. You escalated the situation beyond reason. Blake could have been seriously injured. He was injured, Ariel replied. But whose fault is that? Morgan didn't answer. He stood, pacing behind his chair. A performance rather than contemplation. I've spoken to Mr. Watkins, he said. He claims he saw nothing unusual. Of course he did. Ariel could feel the injustice tightening like a rope around her ribs, but she held steady. Morgan clasped his hands behind his back, voice low and pointed. Ariel, this school has zero tolerance for aggressive behavior, especially from students who are— He paused, searching for a word that wouldn't sound offensive. New. Ariel knew exactly what he meant. Jessie's voice echoed in her mind from the hallway. He's protecting Blake, Ariel inhaled slowly. I want to give my statement, Morgan waved dismissively. Statements don't matter without proof. I have proof. The words stopped him mid-sentence. Morgan raised an eyebrow. Oh? Ariel stayed silent. She didn't need to explain. Not yet. A knock sounded. Morgan frowned. Enter. Mr. Watkins stepped in, looking nervous, sweat beading at his temples. He nodded curtly at Ariel, then turned toward the principal. Morgan, the file you requested, it's, already here. Morgan narrowed his eyes. What file? Watkins hesitated, then handed over a tablet. The, video, sent anonymously to the main office. Ariel's lips curved slightly. Morgan's brows furrowed. He tapped the screen. The video opened. Blake shoving Ariel, her stumbling, his second lunge, her single clean punch. Self-defense, pure and simple. Morgan's face drained of color. Watkins swallowed hard. Ariel watched them in silence. Morgan tried to regain his composure. This could be edited. It's watermarked with Sienna Park's student ID, Ariel said. She filmed the whole thing. Jessie sent it to your inbox before you called me in. Morgan stiffened. Checkmate. The room vibrated with the weight of truth. Inescapable. Undeniable. Mr. Watkins took a step back. It looked like self-defense to me. Morgan shot him a look sharp enough to cut. Watkins went quiet instantly. Ariel folded her arms. Not triumphant, simply resolute. I didn't attack Blake. I stopped him from attacking me, and now you have proof. Morgan sank slowly into his chair, jaw tight, fingers steepled as he processed the corner he'd been forced into. Truth always chooses the perfect moment to surface. But Ariel knew better than to relax. Even cornered by evidence, Principal Morgan's pride, and his allegiance to Blake's powerful family, wasn't going to let him accept defeat easily. And she could see the next move forming behind his eyes. He still had no intention of punishing Blake. Principal Morgan didn't dismiss Ariel right away. Instead, he gestured stiffly toward the door. Wait outside. Ariel stepped into the hallway, Jessie waiting anxiously on a nearby bench. But before Jessie could ask anything, the office door shut behind Ariel with a heavy thud, one that sounded too deliberate to be accidental. Inside, the real conversation began. Principal Morgan moved quickly, lowering the blinds and locking the office door. His expression shifted from forced professionalism to something colder, sharper, self-preserving. He turned to Mr. Watkins. We can't let this get out, Watkins blinked. But the video will not be acknowledged, Morgan snapped. If we confirm it's real, the Rowan family will tear this school apart. Donations gone, programs shut down, our ratings tanked. No, he exhaled sharply. The girl is the problem, not Blake. Watkins looked uneasy, but fear kept him obedient. A knock sounded. Evans slipped inside, eyes red, still shaking from Blake's defeat. "Morgan," he said quickly, "the whole school is talking about the video. You need to do something." Morgan nodded slowly. "We will, but not what they expect." Evan frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Blame," Morgan said, "is a tool, and we're going to use it wisely." He turned to Watkins. "Draft a report stating Ariel displayed excessive aggression. Say Blake was provoking verbally, but she responded violently without control. Use terms like unnecessary force and overreaction. Make her look dangerous." Watkins hesitated. "But the video—" "We'll never see the board," Morgan hissed. Evan relaxed, a cruel smirk pulling at his lips. "So she's the one getting punished?" Morgan nodded. "She'll be suspended. Maybe more." Evan exhaled shakily, relief softening his shoulders. "Good." On the other side of the office door, Ariel felt the weight of the system pressing in from all sides. She could almost hear the gears turning, gears that had crushed students before her, gears greased with privilege and money. Jessie leaned closer. "Ariel, I don't trust that man. He's protecting Blake. I can feel it." Ariel didn't respond. She already knew. Inside, Morgan lowered his voice. "That girl is trained. You don't learn a punch like that by accident. We cannot let someone like her become a symbol of resistance." Evans stiffened. "Trained? Trained how?" Morgan shrugged. "I don't know, but it makes her even more dangerous. And the board will believe whatever report we give them." A new voice cut through the room. "I wouldn't count on that." Morgan turned sharply. At the doorway stood Coach Ryland, arms crossed over his chest, jaw clenched, eyes burning with a force that sucked all the air out of the room. He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him with a quiet click. "Morgan," he said, voice low, "I heard you're discussing a disciplinary action against Ariel Carter." Morgan straightened. "This is none of your business, Coach." Ryland's stare hardened. "It becomes my business when you start lying." Evan scoffed. "What do you care? She's nobody." Ryland moved so fast, Evan flinched backward. "She's not nobody," Ryland growled. "I trained that girl for years. I know exactly what she is." Morgan narrowed his eyes. "And what would that be?" Ryland's reply was calm, devastating. "A disciplined, controlled fighter who only uses force when she has no other choice, which is more than I can say for Blake." Evan's mouth snapped shut. Ryland continued, voice like a blade. "If you bury that video, Morgan, you won't just be corrupt. You'll be exposed. And this time, you won't be able to hide behind donors." Morgan's face tightened. His facade cracked. Because Ryland wasn't just a coach. He was respected, trusted, and connected. He could drag this entire cover-up into the light. When people in power try to bury the truth, it takes someone bigger, someone braver, to drag it back into daylight. Morgan's mind raced, but even cornered, he wasn't ready to surrender. After Ryland left, Morgan made his move anyway, signing the disciplinary order. Ariel Carter, despite the evidence, was about to be suspended. By lunchtime, Westbrook High was vibrating with rumor. The cafeteria usually buzzed with normal teenage chaos, laughter, clattering trays, arguments over who stole whose fries, but today the noise had a sharper edge. Students huddled in circles, faces lit by phone screens, eyes wide with disbelief. Ariel entered quietly, tray in hand, Jessie at her side. But the moment she stepped in, dozens of heads turned. Conversations halted. Forks froze midair. Jessie whispered, "Ariel, they know. Everyone knows." Ariel stayed calm, but her senses sharpened. Across the room, Sienna Park stood on a cafeteria bench, her phone held high like a beacon. Then it happened. A notification ping ripped through the cafeteria. then another and another. Hundreds of phones buzzed simultaneously as the file transferred from group chats to school servers to social feeds. Within seconds, the video of Blake attacking Ariel, then Ariel's single punch, was everywhere. Gasps rippled across the cafeteria, followed by stunned silence, then a tidal wave of reactions. "Oh my God, he shoved her first. She didn't start anything. That punch was clean. She didn't even look mad. Blake's been lying all morning." Jesse exhaled in relief. "They're on your side, Ariel." But Ariel wasn't convinced. The tides in high school shifted fast, but rarely stayed loyal. Still, seeing the truth spread felt like a weight lifting off her chest. Then Sienna shouted, "There's a second video." The room erupted. "What second video? There's more?" "No freaking way. Play it." Sienna tapped her phone, projecting the second clip onto the cafeteria TV screen via Bluetooth. The footage was grainier, older, but unmistakable. Blake Rowan cornering a freshman boy, shoving him against lockers, laughing with Evan while the boy cried. Another cut. Blake ripping a girl's notebook. Blake tripping a kid with crutches. Blake stealing lunches. Blake slamming someone into a trash can. The cafeteria filled with horrified gasps. Someone whispered, "He's been doing this for years." Another added, "And the school ignored it." Jesse looked at Ariel with a mixture of vindication and heartbreak. People finally see him for who he really is. A cheer suddenly broke out from one table, students clapping, pointing at the screen, shouting, "Finally, someone stood up to him." Ariel's breath caught. Not pride, just the gravity of what was unraveling. The facade surrounding Blake Rowan was collapsing, and fast. Across the room, a commotion stirred. Blake, pale and unsteady, had returned from the nurse's office. His jaw was swollen, a bruise forming beneath one eye. He stared at the cafeteria TV in horror as his legacy burned on screen. "You," he choked, voice trembling with fury and fear. "You did this." He pointed at Ariel. His hand shook visibly. Ariel didn't respond. She didn't need to, because Evan pushed through the crowd next, rage burning hotter than Blake's. The humiliation of watching his best friend knocked out twice, once physically, once socially, had broken something inside him. He climbed onto a chair, shouting over the noise, "Listen up!" The cafeteria fell silent. Evan's voice trembled with hatred. "She thinks she's some hero, but she's not. She attacked Blake. She ruined him, and I swear she's gonna regret it." Jesse stepped in front of Ariel instinctively. "Stop threatening her." Evan ignored her. He jabbed a finger in Ariel's direction. "You're dead, Carter. You hear me? You're dead." The cafeteria gasped. Teachers sprinted over, pushing through the crowd. Someone yelled for security. Students pulled out their phones, recording everything. Ariel stood still, posture straight, eyes calm. No fear, no tremble, nothing. Just silent resolve. One punch didn't just expose Blake. It exposed an entire toxic chain built on silence and fear. As security dragged Evan back, swearing and struggling, a staff member called out, "Ariel Carter, report to Principal Morgan's office immediately." Head swiveled toward her again. Ariel nodded once, walked toward the door, and knew whatever awaited inside that office would be far more dangerous than Blake or Evan. The system itself was preparing retaliation. The basketball court behind Westbrook High was usually loud during lunch. Basketballs thudding, sneakers squeaking, teenagers shouting over half-hearted games. But today, the court felt different. The air carried a charged tension, like the moments before a storm breaks. Ariel stepped onto the asphalt with measured breaths. She'd been heading toward the administrative building, but the route cut past the court, and the crowd gathering there made her slow. Dozens of students circled the center of the court, phones out, whispers flying like sparks. Jesse's voice reached her first. "Ariel, don't come closer!" But it was too late. Evan stepped into the ring of students, eyes bloodshot, chest heaving. Rage radiated off him like heat from a bonfire. The bruising humiliation of the cafeteria scene twisted his face into something feral. "There she is," he snarled. "The school's new superstar." Ariel stopped 6 feet away, posture straight, hands relaxed at her sides. She wasn't provoking. She wasn't hiding. She was simply present. Evans spat at the ground. "You think you can ruin Blake's life and just walk around like you own the place?" Ariel didn't respond. Silence was her shield, her discipline, her refusal to match stupidity with emotion. Evan took her silence as insult. He lunged. It wasn't a shove or a slap. He came at her full speed, fists clenched, arms swinging wildly. The crowd screamed. Someone yelled, "Stop!" Another shouted, "Security's coming!" But Ariel didn't panic. The world slowed, her training moving through her body like second nature. She shifted 1 foot back, letting Evan's punch slice through empty air. His momentum dragged him off balance. He stumbled, regained footing, swung again. This one was sloppy, fueled by desperation and embarrassment. Ariel stepped aside, her movements clean, almost effortless. Evan's knuckles hit nothing but wind. Anger turned to fear in his eyes. "You! Stand still!" he barked, breath ragged. But Ariel didn't need to stand still. She needed to end it. When Evan charged a third time, she made her move. Not a punch, not a strike, just precision. She ducked under his arm, pivoted behind him, and in one fluid motion, she caught his wrist, folded his elbow, and locked his arm behind his back. The crowd gasped. Evan collapsed to his knees, pain forcing him down. "Ah! Ah! Let go! Let go!" Ariel held him, not to hurt, just to stop. Her grip firm, controlled, exactly as she had been taught. He struggled once, twice, then froze as his own fear strangled him. Students stared, not at Evan, but at Ariel, at her calm, her control, her refusal to hit back even when attacked. Jessie whispered, "She's not fighting. She's managing him." Ariel released Evan gently but sharply enough that he lost balance and fell to the asphalt. He scrambled backward on his hands, breath shaking, eyes wide. He looked at her like she was something dangerous, something beyond what he understood. But Ariel's expression never shifted. No smugness, no triumph, just clarity, real strength, she said quietly, "is knowing when not to strike." The courtyard erupted. Not with cheers, not with panic, but with awe. Students who once followed Blake now stepped away from Evan, murmuring, "She didn't even hit him. He couldn't touch her. She's trained, seriously trained. She's stronger than all of them." Evan scrambled to his feet and pointed a shaking finger at her. "You're dead, Carter. This isn't over." But the fear in his voice betrayed him. True power isn't in the hit. It's in the moment you choose not to deliver it. And while the crowd murmured, a voice cut through the chaos, a staff member running toward them. "Ariel Carter, Principal Morgan wants you. Now." The real battle was waiting in the office. The large conference room at Westbrook High had never felt so tense. A long, polished table ran through the center, lined with teachers, administrators, and rigid-faced parents. The overhead lights hummed quietly, but the air was heavy with unspoken judgment. Ariel sat at one end of the table, calm but alert. Jessie wasn't allowed inside. Neither were any students except her. At the opposite side sat Principal Morgan, arms folded, jaw tight. Beside him were Mr. Watkins, shifting nervously in his seat, and Coach Ryland, who looked like he'd been dragged there against his will, but refused to leave Ariel unsupported. 2 seats down sat Blake's parents, tight smiles, expensive suits, and eyes full of disdain. Evan's mother fanned herself dramatically, as if she were the victim of the entire ordeal. Morgan cleared his throat with unnecessary force. "Let's begin. We're here today to address a serious act of violence committed by Ariel Carter against another student." "Self-defense," Coach Ryland cut in. Morgan gave him a warning glare. "As I said, a violent altercation." Ariel looked directly at him. "You saw the video." A murmur rippled across the table. Morgan stiffened, then forced his calm facade back in place. "The video," he said slowly, "is inconclusive. It only shows your reaction. A reaction that was far beyond necessary force. Blake Rowan is recovering from a serious concussion. That level of aggression is—" The door opened. Morgan faltered mid-sentence. Heads turned. A tall, broad-shouldered man in full U.S. Army uniform stepped through the doorway. His presence shifted the air instantly. His boots hit the floor with a measured weight, and every adult in the room straightened instinctively. Marcus Carter, Ariel's father. Ariel's chest tightened for the first time that day. She hadn't expected him to arrive this quickly. Marcus strode forward, eyes sharp, posture commanding. He stood behind Ariel's chair, resting one hand on her shoulder, not protectively, steadily, solidly, as if anchoring her. He addressed the room without needing to raise his voice. "I heard my daughter was accused of excessive force." No one dared interrupt. Morgan tried to recover, clearing his throat again. "Mr. Carter, Before you continue," Marcus said, sliding a thick folder across the table, "let's look at the facts." Blake's mother reached for it hesitantly. When she opened it, her face drained of color. Inside were printed statements, dated reports from students, emails and screenshots, evidence of Blake and Evan repeatedly bullying classmates, evidence the school had ignored. Marcus's voice remained steady, but the steel beneath it was unmistakable. "This is a documented pattern of violence by Blake Rowan and Evan Marsh, a pattern you chose not to act on." Blake's father bristled. "Now wait, Marcus didn't even look at him. "And when my daughter finally defended herself against one of their attacks, she became the threat." "Interesting." Mr. Watkins swallowed hard, guilt flickering across his eyes. Morgan tried again, weaker this time. "Mr. Carter, we must investigate all sides." Marcus leaned forward slightly, enough to make Morgan shrink back. "You cannot call this excessive self-defense when your system allowed my daughter to be harassed for weeks." Silence suffocated the room. Coach Ryland's eyes reflected something like pride. Watkins looked like he wanted to melt into his chair. Blake's mother's lips trembled as she closed the folder. "You don't get to call it excessive force when your system failed to protect my daughter from the start." The balance in the room shifted, power sliding away from Morgan inch by inch. But despite being cornered, Principal Morgan wasn't ready to surrender his authority. And the decision he made next would send the meeting spiraling into an even bigger storm. The meeting ended like a bomb that had been quietly placed under the school's reputation. As Ariel and Marcus stepped out of the conference room, whispers rippled down the hallway like cracks spreading through glass. Jessie and Sienna rushed toward Ariel the moment they saw her. "What happened? Did they try to blame you again?" Jessie asked breathlessly. Ariel didn't answer right away. She could still feel the weight of her father's steady hand on her shoulder, hear the silence that fell when the stack of evidence hit the table. But before Ariel could speak, a notification ping echoed down the hallway, then another, then dozens. Sienna glanced at her phone. Her eyes widened. "Oh, my God! Someone leaked the second video." It spread like wildfire. Students pulled out their phones. Screens lit up. Gasps filled the corridor. And there he was, Blake Rowan, in clip after clip, tormenting students across multiple school years. One showed him dumping a boy's backpack in a trash can. Another showed him tripping a timid girl with glasses. Another, Blake and Evan cornering a freshman, forcing him to hand over lunch money. The hallway transformed into a live courtroom, and Blake was finally on trial. Students who once shrank away from him now whispered with disgust. "He did all that? How did he get away with it? He should have been expelled years ago. This is insane. How did the school miss this?" Ariel watched silently as the truth, long buried, clawed its way into the light. Then Blake appeared. He moved slowly, one hand pressed to the bruise on his jaw, eyes bloodshot. When he realized dozens of students were staring, whispering, pointing, something flickered in his face. Fear, real fear. Evan pushed through the crowd, face pale. "Blake, don't look at that. It's just lies. But Blake heard the audio in one of the clips. His own voice, laughing while someone cried. Mocking, threatening, dominating. His stomach dropped. It wasn't, Blake's voice cracked. It wasn't like that, but the court of public opinion had already shifted. A tall student with dark hair stepped out from the crowd. People parted for him like he carried gravity. His voice was steady, but shook with old wounds. "That's exactly what it was." Blake froze. The boy continued. "Last year he cornered me behind the gym, slammed my face into the fence, told me if I reported it, Principal Morgan would take care of it." He looked around the hallway. "I didn't believe him until Morgan called me to his office and told me to stop causing trouble because Blake's father funds the athletic program." A stunned silence fell. Jessie covered her mouth. Ariel's eyes narrowed. Sienna's phone trembled as she hit record. "And by the way," the boy added, "I confronted Morgan this morning." Sienna recorded the whole conversation. Every head turned to Sienna. She held up her phone without shame. "He admitted it. All of it." The hallway exploded. "What? Morgan covered for Blake? This whole school, this entire system is rigged." Blake staggered backward, crushed by the avalanche of truth. He wasn't just a bully anymore. He was the symbol of a rotten structure collapsing under its own weight. Evan grabbed his arm. "Blake, we need to go, now." But Blake shook him off, trembling. "They're turning on me." He was right. Ariel wasn't the only victim. The entire school had been silenced. And with students finally speaking out loud, with video evidence flooding every phone, the once invincible system shook violently, forcing Principal Morgan to step out of his office and face the consequences he could no longer bury. Westbrook High had never seen a day like this. Word of the leaked videos spread faster than wildfire, and by afternoon, the school board had convened an emergency disciplinary committee. What began as a whisper now thundered through administrative hallways, shaking the walls of authority Principal Morgan once believed were unbreakable. The conference room felt colder than usual. Rows of board members sat with rigid spines, laptops open, brows furrowed as they sifted through evidence. Student complaints, archived emails, camera logs, staff reports that had been mysteriously lost, and the damning video clips Sienna posted hours earlier. Morgan stood at the head of the room, hands clasped behind him, a pose of authority that only highlighted how cornered he truly was. Mr. Watkins sat nearby, sweating through his collar, eyes darting nervously. Coach Ryland was a granite figure in the back, arms crossed, gaze unreadable. Ariel and Jessie sat quietly along the side wall, witnesses to the unraveling of a system once designed to silence them. A board member cleared her throat. "We reviewed the footage, not just from this week. Your security team provided 6 months of archived files." Morgan stiffened. "We found multiple incidents involving Blake Rowan and Evan Marsh. Physical intimidation, harassment, repeated targeting of vulnerable students." A murmur of disapproval filled the room. Morgan's voice strained. "Those reports were handled incorrect," another board member interrupted. "They were ignored. We found at least 12 written complaints filed by students and parents, all closed without action. Many marked as resolved by your office." Jessie's breath hitched. Ariel stayed still, expression controlled. The board continued. "We also found staff emails discussing these events. Most teachers expressed concern, but certain communications from administration," the woman looked directly at Morgan, "pressured them to avoid escalating trivial conflicts." Mr. Watkins flinched. One board member added, "This is a systemic failure, one that appears orchestrated." Morgan finally broke. "That is an exaggeration," he snapped. "Blake's family contributes significantly to this school. I simply prevented unnecessary scandal." "That's enough." The room turned toward the doorway. Coach Ryland stepped forward, pulling a printed document from his jacket pocket. His voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. "If you want scandal," he said, "let's talk about this." He placed a printed email on the table. It was addressed to him. From Morgan. The message was short, unmistakable. "Do not interfere with any disciplinary issues involving Blake or Evan. Their parents are crucial supporters. Handle their conflicts quietly. Avoid escalation if you value stability in this department." A ripple of shock swept through the room. Even Watkins couldn't hide his disbelief. Jesse whispered, "He really wrote that?" Morgan's face drained of all color. "That was taken out of context. Ryland, you—" Ryland's eyes flashed. "Context? A student begged me for help last semester. I reported Blake's behavior. You shut it down. I kept this email because I knew the day would come when your context wouldn't hold." The board members exchanged looks heavy with verdict. One spoke softly. "Principal Morgan, this is a breach of ethics, policy, and student safety. The severity cannot be overstated." Morgan's mouth opened, but no words came. For the first time, the man who controlled the school felt truly powerless. When the truth finally rises, those who climbed highest on lies are the ones who fall the hardest. And as the committee adjourned, Morgan realized the inevitable. His authority was slipping through his fingers, but he wasn't ready to accept defeat. What he did next would push the board into a decision that would shake the entire school. The entire student body packed into Westbrook High's auditorium, hundreds of restless teenagers, anxious parents, and uneasy faculty members filling every row. Whispers climbed the walls like smoke. The stage lights were bright, harsh, exposing every crack in the facade the school had maintained for years. Ariel stood near the back with Jessie and Sienna, her expression calm but watchful. Blake and Evan occupied the far-left seating section under the supervision of two staff members, Blake still bruised, Evan red-eyed and furious. The board members entered first, their presence enough to hush the room instantly. Then Principal Morgan stepped up to the podium, adjusting his tie with trembling fingers. His confidence was gone, replaced with a tight, brittle tension. He cleared his throat. "This assembly is to address the recent incidents." But before he could finish, Board Director Alvarez approached the microphone. "Principal Morgan," she said, her tone ice-sharp, "please step aside." The room rippled with murmurs. Morgan froze, but with the entire school watching, he had no choice. He stepped back stiffly, jaw clenched. Director Alvarez turned to the audience. "Based on our investigation, on the evidence collected, and on the testimonies of students and staff, the disciplinary committee has reached its decision." Silence flooded the auditorium. "First," she announced, "regarding Blake Rowan." All heads turned to the bruised boy in the corner. His mother gripped his arm so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Due to repeated documented acts of harassment, bullying, and physical aggression, including incidents previously ignored by administration, Blake Rowan is hereby suspended for the remainder of the semester. He will also be required to complete a behavioral rehabilitation program before returning. Gasps. A few relieved exhalations, a stunned inhale from Blake's mother. Blake's face crumpled, not in pain, but in humiliation. Director Alvarez continued, "As for Evan Marsh," Evan flinched. "He will receive formal disciplinary warning, placed under behavioral monitoring, and required to attend mandatory counseling sessions. Any further violations will result in expulsion." Evan swore under his breath, sinking lower in his seat. "And finally," the director said, her tone dipping lower, heavier, "regarding faculty negligence," a ripple went through the teachers' section. "Mr. Watkins and all staff documented as ignoring or dismissing student safety concerns are now under formal investigation. Immediate administrative leave is pending." Watkins looked like the floor had dropped beneath him, but the room wasn't prepared for what came next. "Now, concerning Principal Morgan," Morgan stiffened. The room waited. Director Alvarez turned to him fully. Her voice held no malice, just truth sharpened to a blade. Principal Morgan, your deliberate suppression of student reports, your documented pressure on staff to ignore misconduct, and your failure to protect the student body constitutes a breach of ethical duty. Morgan's face drained of color. Effective immediately, she said. You are removed from your position as principal of Westbrook High. The auditorium erupted. Gasps, shouts, stunned whispers. Morgan staggered, gripping the podium as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. You can't, he began, but his voice cracked. Security approached the stage. Students watched with unblinking eyes. He was escorted down the steps, past rows of teenagers whose lives he had quietly dictated for years, past teachers who once feared him, past parents who once trusted him, past Ariel, who watched with quiet, steady eyes. It wasn't revenge, it was justice. The silence was finally broken, and a new era at Westbrook had just begun. As Morgan exited the auditorium, one truth settled across the crowd. Everything was different now. And when the board members stepped away from the microphone, every student turned, almost instinctively, toward the girl who started the chain reaction, toward Ariel Carter, waiting to see what she would do next. Class 10B felt different the next morning, almost unrecognizably so. The same fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same rows of desks stood in neat formation, and the same chalk dust lingered in the air. But the atmosphere had shifted entirely. Ariel stepped through the doorway with her backpack slung over one shoulder, the weight of the last few days still lingering in her mind. Yet for the first time, she didn't feel 1,000 sharp eyes judging her. Instead, the room fell quiet in a different way. Not out of intimidation, not out of hostility, but out of respect. Jessie practically flew from her seat. Ariel, hey, sit next to me. She grabbed Ariel's wrist with an enthusiasm that made Ariel crack a rare, subtle smile. Jessie was no longer the scared, hesitant bystander she'd been on that first day. She stood proudly at Ariel's side now, loyal, brave, unwavering. As Ariel took her seat beside her, a hush spread across the class. One by one, students approached her desk, slowly, nervously, like they were approaching someone they owed something to. A tall girl with freckles was first. She clutched her notebook tightly. Ariel, I'm sorry. I saw Blake mess with you earlier this semester. I should have said something. A boy followed. He picked on me last year, too. I never told anyone. You stood up to him, so, thanks. Another girl added. We all watched. We didn't help. That wasn't fair. Ariel nodded faintly. Not out of pride, but acknowledgement. Pain didn't vanish overnight, but accountability meant something. Sienna entered the room next, a confident smile on her lips. She gave Ariel a small salute, lifting her phone in a teasing gesture. Your punch went viral. 10,000 views already. Jessie choked on a laugh. Ariel shook her head, half amused, half exasperated. More importantly, Sienna's smile softened. You didn't just defend yourself, you changed things. Don't forget that. Before Ariel could answer, the intercom buzzed. Attention, students. A familiar voice announced, Please welcome Coach Ryland, our new member of the Student Advisory Committee. Cheers erupted in the hallway. Ariel's eyebrows lifted. The classroom door swung open. Coach Ryland stepped inside, clipboard in hand, a rare smile tugging at his lips. Good morning, 10B, he said. I came with a special invitation. Students straightened. Jessie leaned forward. Ariel blinked. Ryland met Ariel's eyes. We're starting a new group on campus, the Student Protection Program, a team dedicated to supporting anyone facing bullying or harassment. He paused. And I want Ariel Carter to join us as a founding member. The classroom broke into applause, real applause, not forced nor fearful. Jessie clapped so hard her palms turned red. Sienna whooped loudly. Even students who had once looked away now celebrated the girl who refused to break. Ariel felt a warmth settle in her chest. Quiet, unfamiliar, profound, not victory, not triumph, purpose. She stood slowly, nodding once. "I'll do it," Ryland smiled. "Welcome aboard." Ariel didn't win because she was stronger. She won because she stood when everyone else stayed silent. As she settled back into her seat, the room buzzing with renewed energy, one realization anchored itself deep inside her. And right here, in the same classroom where she had once been a target, she had become hope for every student who needed someone to stand with them. And in the place that had hurt her most, Ariel Carter rose, not as a victim, but as the beginning of a new future for Westbrook High. And that's how one girl's courage shattered an entire system built on silence. Ariel didn't just defend herself. She exposed the truth, forced the school to face its own corruption, and reminded everyone that strength isn't measured by fists, but by the moment you refuse to stay quiet. Now I want to hear from you. What part of Ariel's journey shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below. If this story hit you the way it hit us, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this.